Do you ever feel like manifestation is just another thing on your to-do list that you don't have time for? Like your spiritual practice is something that you have to do? Honestly, you're not alone because I felt that way too. Something that's really changed my relationship with manifestation is blending it into my lifestyle so that no matter what I'm doing, I'm also manifesting. I call this manifestation as a lifestyle, and it's single handedly made the entire manifestation journey more enjoyable for me. And I've seen my desires show up with a lot more ease. Manifesting as a lifestyle has made manifestation go from feeling like a task to something I just naturally do because it's who I am. If you'd like to learn more about this, I've created a step by step guide for you. I'll link it in my show notes so you can check it out. You're listening to the Affirmation Addict podcast with Payal Corley. This podcast will teach you about the power of affirmations while making manifestation easy and accessible for you in order to enhance your spiritual consciousness. Thank you so much for being here, and now it's time to get started. Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Affirmation Addict podcast. My name is Payal, and today we are talking about how I broke through an old version of myself and kind of stepped into that new up-leveled version. I feel like the past few months/weeks especially, I feel like I was going through some turbulence. And now that I'm on the other side, it obviously makes sense. I feel like hindsight is always 2020. But I wanted to talk to you about just what that process was like, how I actually did it, kind of where I was then, where I am now, things that manifested as a result of it, and just like how the entire journey was. Because I think we all get into manifestation and we think it's going to be just like beautiful and really eye-opening and fun and just like whimsical and dreamy, because I think that's what manifestation, that's how it draws us in, right? It feels like you can get anything you want. It feels like the world is yours. It feels kind of limitless, and it is. It still is. However, what that experience is actually like as you're going through it doesn't always feel that limitless. It doesn't always feel that dreamy. And it's not meant to, honestly. I think the law of polarity really comes in and it teaches you how to be a little bit more accepting, a little bit more okay with where you're at, and how to actually navigate that and navigate the transition into that new version of you is kind of what this episode is all about. Because I think we all know that there's a different version of us that we would love to step into, which is an up-leveled version. And we're doing everything we can to get there, but why does it feel so hard? You're actually doing it right if it feels hard. And that is such a normal sensation, a normal feeling to experience. So let's talk about it. And I just want to give you some honest kind of behind the scenes, but not so behind the scenes, just of like what that was like for me personally. And maybe just some perspectives that'll actually help you experience the same thing as you guys are also going through your own up levels. So a quick context as to where I was versus where I am now. I would say 2 months ago, what month is it? It's April right now. So yeah, I would say 2 months ago, I was in a place, and I've been talking about this theme a lot if you've been listening to this podcast, but I feel like the past year for me, I've been just kind of like, I have everything and why do I feel off? But then diving a little bit deeper, I was noticing a little bit of a disconnect in my business and my purpose. And maybe you have seen it. Maybe if you're part of some of my offerings, you might have noticed it as well. But I feel like there was something off. And I'm a firm believer, especially when like I'm so close to my business and my creations are like an extension of me. It feels like my business is a really good indicator as to if my energy is not in full alignment. So I just knew I wasn't feeling totally lit up in my work. And I knew that by default, that meant there was something just off internally, misaligned with me, something I was maybe not addressing, something that might have been new that have come up, just something or the other. And so like 2 months ago, I honestly felt like I just felt really disconnected. I felt like I was just going through the motions. I felt like I was just doing what I was supposed to do. And I felt like I wasn't being my full self, but I also had no idea what my full self was. And I had like so many fears and limiting beliefs and just like resistance towards even trying new things. Like I knew I wanted to change, but I just couldn't. Like I couldn't get myself to change, especially how I showed up in my business. the other side of me that I really wanted to shift was like my health. I feel like I was really starting to get a little bit like down on myself, just like energetically. Like I wasn't waking up feeling super refreshed all the time. I wasn't like excited to move my body. And I was kind of dealing with negative self talk again. And I wasn't like eating the best nutrition. So I just felt like my health was a little bit off. And you guys know I've been on like this hormone balancing journey. And when I got my blood results back, they told me my cortisol was like too low, which is actually from a function of overexertion of cortisol. So that means like at one point my cortisol was extremely, extremely high, and I basically fully depleted my supply of it from my understanding. And now I had too low of cortisol, which was like a sign of major imbalance. Like there is a healthy balance and my cortisol was way too off. And that's normally as a result of over stressing. So I just felt like I wasn't in the best headspace. Like my anxiety kind of felt like it was coming back. Like I would wake up and just feel anxious or nauseous. And I was just noticing I wasn't doing great and I wasn't like enjoying my life. And that felt horrible. I was like, I literally have everything on paper. But like, why am I not okay? And that was the most confusing thing to me. And then I was like, I literally teach manifestation. I have manifested everything, but then why the heck am I not fully okay? So then I was dealing with imposter syndrome and I was like, am I a fraud? And that really bled into like my relationship with my business and the content I was posting. So just a lot of different things were happening. And probably over the past 2 to 4 months is what I was going through. And I didn't know where to start. I really felt overwhelmed. I felt like I was in just like a stuck place and I didn't know how to get out of it. And I was so holding on to what my future self looked like, but I had no way of knowing how to actually get there. And the biggest things I did was kind of as I made the decision, like, enough is enough. And I've noticed that's a pattern for me personally. When I'm in this low place, I have to feel really low for a while. And then I get to a point where I'm tired of feeling low. And then it feels like it switches from like exhaustion and depletion to more so anger almost and frustration. So it shifts from like helplessness to like, I am so done with this. And I hit that point where I was like, I am so done with this. I've talked about this, I think, once before, but when we were in Costa Rica, I like was not having a good time. Like when we were in Costa Rica, I was actually not fully okay. And the first part of it, the second part of it was amazing. But like, I was like, I'm literally on a trip with my husband. We're staying at the coolest places. We're in a beautiful country. Like, what is wrong with me? And that was my like, this is insane. Like, how can you not be happy here? How can you just try and like ruin this? And I was so shocked at myself because travel is normally the one thing that gets me super in alignment. It gets me so inspired. It makes me feel really, really good. So when my like last resort, which is let me go escape, let me go shift my energy, also wasn't working, I was just like, oh, I am in some deep, deep shadows right now and I got to get out of it. So that was my really turning point of enough is enough. Cause I was like, I'm literally in the most beautiful country. What is happening? Like, why am I not okay? Like that is a me problem and that is no one else's issue. It's just me. And so that's when I started to realize like things need to change. And nothing else outside of me is able to change how I feel. So maybe I need to stop trying to shift and stop trying to manifest things outside of me and start trying to manifest things inside of me. So coming back to those feelings, right? I wanted to feel satiated. I wanted to feel energetic. I wanted to feel alive. I wanted to feel inspired, especially in my work. I wanted to feel like connected and driven. I wanted to feel grateful for literally the beautiful life that I do have. Like there's nothing I can't be grateful for. And I was honestly just mad at myself for not feeling grateful, which I now understand was just a signal that I needed to get my stuff together. So I started to think about like, what is it that I actually want? Even if I didn't know like what my day-to-day life would be like, I just needed to start putting a little bit of attention towards what's the difference, like what changes, how would I show up differently, and start to brainstorm that because it can be overwhelming when you know you want to make changes, but you have no idea how to get there. So I first started to really focus on my feelings. And the hardest part and I will say this 1,000 times because I'm still learning this, is when you start to feel these heavier emotions, we try to kind of band-aid and create solutions. It's like, okay, I'm feeling anxious. Let me try leaning on something. Let me use like an essential oil. For me, cold plunging. I will hop into our cold plunge if I'm feeling anxiety come up. Like I have all these remedies and they do work, but that doesn't mean I'm actually working through the anxiety. I'm working through the sensation of anxiety. I'm not working at the root of the anxiety. The root of the anxiety is just all in me, right? So I realized, and a huge thing I learned over the past 2 months was like, I wasn't actually feeling my feelings. I was probably processing them, but I wasn't actually sitting with them. So what I did, and this was the first time I'd ever done this by myself, not guided by a coach, just by myself, not guided by a friend. I've done some guided like feeling sessions, which were really helpful. But this was just by myself. I was in Costa Rica and we got there, we unpacked our bags and I was like, I want to go home. And I knew in that moment that that was something that was not true to me. And so I sat there and I was like, why do I want to go home? What's uncomfortable? And I sat and I cried and I told Tom, like, we're in a hotel room. It's just us two. So I'm like, I just need to go do my thing for a little bit. I will be back. We were in the same room, but I was like, just give me some space for a little bit. I put my headphones in and I sat there and I was crying. I was doing all these crazy things. And I remember once I finished, like different sensations came up. I got a lot of awareness. I received a lot of awareness as like, I just didn't feel safe with myself. I didn't feel safe in my own body. I didn't feel safe in my own company because I kept trying to band-aid everything outside of me. I try to use my work as a band-aid. I try to use my husband as a band-aid, my family, my like beauty rituals, all of that. I was using so many things outside of me that I still love as a band-aid, but I was running away from myself. And that was the biggest lesson I learned because my anxiety was basically telling me, hey, you have poured everything into the world around you and you are not pouring into me, into this feeling. And I need you to just be with me. No music, no nothing, just me and you. And we sit. And I hated it. Honestly, it sucked. It felt uncomfortable. I wanted to run away. It made me feel sweaty. Like it was such a horrible feeling for 10 seconds. And then after those 10 seconds, I used my breath to help me. I immediately just felt so much ease. And I finally started to understand the concept when people say your emotions are energy in motion. That's it. Your emotions are just energy moving through your body, creating sensation that are meant to be felt. And how do you feel it? You literally sit there. And I think it's the hardest thing to teach. And it is personally something I'm working on understanding more so I can help you do this better because right now I don't know how to teach this. Like I am still figuring it out for myself, but like so much of it is just sitting there and noticing and observing. It's not meditation. There's no intention. It's just you're sitting and you're feeling and you're letting the emotional waves ride through you. And sometimes a message may come through, sometimes no message will come through. There's no kind of end goal except to just give that emotion some time and energy to exist in your body, because that's the only way it can actually be relieved. Otherwise, it's just going to go deeper and deeper into bigger and bigger versions. Maybe it'll lead to other scarier emotions. And it was the most profound, but like healing thing I needed to do for myself. And I needed it because my last resort of travel, always healing everything for me, wasn't working. And I was like, I'm out of options. I literally was like, I have studied this work for so long. I am out of tools. I'm out of affirmations. I'm out of meditations. I'm out of all of it. And all that I needed was myself. I didn't need a tool, which was the whole point. Like I didn't need to lean on anything. I just needed myself. And I was running away from myself. And that theme carried through for me for the past 2 months. I realized how many things I have done for other people or for the approval or the love or the attention or the validation of other people, even at this point in my life. Like I'll do things for Tom in my head, for Tom to be like, oh my gosh, you're such a great wife. Or I'll do things for my family to be like, wow, she's a good daughter. I always get a ton of questions in my DMs from people asking how I can manifest X. The truth is, you can really manifest anything as long as it's for the greatest good. And if you're having trouble manifesting something right now, or you feel stuck on your journey, I have a really beautiful resource I've made for you. It's a free quiz. It's called the Manifestation Archetype Quiz. And it's something that I've created so you can find out your manifestation style to give you more clarity on your spiritual journey. After taking the quiz, you're going to receive the best resources for your specific archetype to help you attract your desires based on where you're at and what you want to create. So you can find a link to the quiz in the show notes, or just head to my website at www.affirmation-addict.com. So it's not like it goes away, like that people pleasing, that need for external validation, like it runs deep, and we work through it over and over and over again. And I thought I worked through it. I totally did. Like I really thought I had worked through it. But when I realized that I distract myself by trying to be the best version of me for everybody else, I realized I wasn't being the best version of me for myself. Like my intentions and my true motives were still externally inspired. They weren't actually internally focused and motivated. And that's when I realized this new version of me, she's here for you. Like she's here for herself. She's not here for other people. She's not here to reach a certain goal so people can know that she reaches a goal. It has to be intrinsically motivated. And it was a whole new way of me looking at my life, and also appreciation. My gratitude wasn't coming through because I felt guilty for all of that I have manifested. And I felt guilty that I haven't been able to help every single person who is in my kind of audience manifest the same stuff, because it's like, I feel like I've manifested an amazing life and continue to do so. And I really, really want that for everyone. And I feel almost ashamed or like sad when I can't do it for other people, even though there's nothing I can do except teach. And then most people, even when you do teach them, they don't actually apply it, because that's just human nature. We love consuming, but we hate actually applying. And so it's like, how do I remove the meaning I'm assigning to myself from everybody else's stories and implications and just come back to me? That is really the point I've been trying to get to, and realizing the patterns that I kept putting myself through. So a huge pattern for me is I would distract myself with people. I would distract myself by pouring into everything outside of me. And I had to notice that pattern and then decide to let it go. And even though I would have that like immediate gut reaction to go through that pattern, I would say, okay, I'm going through that pattern and I'm going to try and choose a different one today. So normally my reaction is to like book plans with people and hang out with people. And I was like, no, I'm going to keep my calendar open and I have to hang out with myself. Whatever I do, whether I want to work, whether I want to create, whether I want to sit there, whatever it is, it's me and me. And I really noticed those patterns, and I had to start actively choosing to break them. And another thing I noticed that happened throughout this up level phase was a lot of like urges to cleanse. I would like have just like a kind of busy day, and then sometimes at night I couldn't sleep, and I would just like open up a drawer in the house and just purge it, reorganize it, take everything out, clean it out, and put it away. And I realized I was doing this in different areas of my house, and just even energetically and digitally. There's so many ways you can cleanse and purge. But I noticed I was just going through instinctively, and like one day I purged my closet. One day I organized all of our Tupperware. One day I went through all of my makeup that was expired and cleaned it. One day I cleaned all my makeup brushes, like just random things that have no relation to anything, but it was just that constant desire to make space for the new. I wanted to cut my hair. I wanted to exfoliate. Like literally, this is such a random thing, but I was like, I really want to like exfoliate my skin more. I want to exfoliate, and exfoliation is like literally rubbing off dead skin cells, or like dry brushing, or like just literally cleaning your skin. And I exfoliate. I don't exfoliate my body that much, but I was like, I really want to exfoliate my entire body. And it wasn't to like get glowy skin or anything. It was like a need. It was like a very internal need to do this. And as I'm speaking now, I'm like, that was another way of me just purging my entire body, my aura, my energy field, all of that. and giving myself permission to go through and clean, because I am trying to make space for the new. Unfollowing, blocking, or muting whoever is necessary, or deleting messages. And this is not really applicable to me, but like deleting messages. Maybe you're in a situationship, or maybe you have a friend who really hurt you. Deleting those messages, don't go reread them. Just making space for new energies that need to come through. And really, so much of the work was actually me reflecting and sitting with myself, reflecting and sitting with myself, sitting with myself. And then whatever inspired action came through, like the cleaning, or like listening to certain music activates different emotions. So, really just allowing yourself to listen to what's coming up and taking action on it, even if it's completely unrelated. That's really what inspired action is. It's like this urge. Like, I had this urge to listen to like some of my old childhood favorite Hindi songs. And I was just listening to Hindi music for days. I listen to Hindi music a lot of the times, but it was very specific, like 90s Bollywood. It wasn't like recent or wedding songs, or wasn't like dance music. It was like a very specific era of my life that brought up this nostalgia that I kept listening to. So I'm sure there was something tied that this pattern arose at that point, something or the other. I don't know. I don't need to know the meaning, but just trusting it and doing what you feel called to do. And then the biggest thing that I want to say is, as you go through these up levels, and what comes out on the other side is like a version of you that feels so free, that feels like a bird who can finally fly, or like a butterfly who just became a butterfly from being a caterpillar. So like it just feels like you just step into this whole new wave of energy, and it feels like there's a wash over you. Like you can feel the difference. You don't feel as like obsessive. You don't feel as anxious. You don't feel as doubtful. Like you have this newfound and newly built trust and relationship with the universe, because as you're up leveling, you do have to lean on the universe so much, because there's so little certainty. There's so much confusion, and there's so much emotion. There is so much just shifting in the surface, that you'll really start to rebuild your faith in the process, because you're almost forced to. For me, I was forced to learn lessons that I refused to learn. I hated sitting with my feelings. I absolutely hated it. I dreaded it. I ran away. My instinct was to flight, like fight or flight. Mine was totally flight. But I was forced to when I was at my last resort in Costa Rica, and I could not get on a trip and go home. I had a wedding to attend, and like, we're not going to do that. So I had to do it. And it was the lowest I felt, but right after it was the highest I had ever felt. Not immediately, but like within that month and a half of just doing this kind of consistently for myself and letting myself ride those waves. And now, about a month after kind of feeling that breakthrough, I honestly feel like a new woman. I feel like I'm on top of the world. I feel so connected to my work. I feel so inspired. I feel so connected to myself. I feel really connected to my intuition. I feel just all of the things that I said at the beginning of this episode that I really wanted to feel. And like, things that I have been working towards or trying to manifest that maybe haven't come into fruition have been flowing in so easily, because I finally remembered how the manifestation process worked. I was forced to go through it again. I was forced to sit, not just focusing on the desire, but focusing on my inner world first. And I think that was the biggest game changer for me, because it really reminded me like what manifestation is all about. Like the outcome is 1%, your internal world is 99%. And this experience for me of up leveling did exactly that for me. I had to really come back into my inner world. My outer world had nothing to do with it. My outer world wasn't doing it. It wasn't cutting it. It was not giving me the peace I was looking for. So I had to come back in. And I'm sure I'll have to go through this again at some point. I think this is a very annual thing for me, always around this time of year. But giving yourself permission to ride those waves. And when you are going through that up level, be kind to yourself, be patient with yourself, and really lean on what you know. And you'll have to actually put into practice a lot of the spiritual principles, like letting go, detachment, surrender, sitting with yourself, choosing how you feel. You really have to actually practice them. And so this is a long story, a long little update as to where I was and where I am now. And I hope kind of some of the details gave you a little bit of context. And maybe you're like, oh my God, I'm literally in the middle of an up level. I hope that if you are listening to this episode, you were drawn to it for a reason. And maybe it was to tell you that, yes, you are not alone. You are in the middle of an up level. So keep doing what you're doing, because you're never in the wrong place. You're always exactly where you're supposed to be. And even if it doesn't feel like it, try and let yourself believe it, because that's what really helped me throughout this whole journey, is pouring into my spiritual practice, pouring into practicing the manifestation tools, really, really practicing what I preach. And it helped me so much, because there were so many moments where I could have just been stuck in it and never kind of gotten myself out. But by leaning on the spiritual practice, I was able to navigate those super low days as well as the super high days. So I hope this was helpful. I hope that you also realize that your up levels and the journey of up leveling can be almost like an initiation. It can feel like a lot, but you're not alone, and you have the tools, you know the tools, you just got to use them. So I hope this episode helped you. And if you're going through it, I love you, and I can't wait to see you on the other side. Thanks for listening. I love you. Mwah. Bye. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for listening, and I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If this episode resonated with you, it would mean the world to me if you could rate and review the podcast and share it on your social media, so I know to keep creating episodes that are inspiring you to manifest. I'm so genuinely grateful for the time we shared today, and I'd love for you to join the community by following @AffirmationAddict on Instagram. To continue diving into spirituality and manifestation, head over to my website, affirmation-addict.com. Until next time, I'm sending you so much love and so much healing energy.